Hello, hello, welcome. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Hangry Mexican. Now, for all you messy people out there, I think you're going to love this episode. Today, we're going to have a professional organizer on the podcast, Elva Fonseca. She owns her own business called Sensational Organizing Services, and she is just full of knowledge on how to get cleaned up, how to clean up your house, how to declutter all the stuff that you have collected over the years. I know I'm guilty of it. And she is part of, or a member rather, of NAPO, the National Association of Productivity and Organizing Professionals. We talk about the psychology of organizing and decluttering, and just why are people so messy sometimes? You know, why do they collect all this stuff? She just has so many interesting things to say, and I just can't wait to get to the interview. So, DJ, roll that music. Yourself and just tell me about your claim to fame.
You're so sweet, claim to fame. Well, my name is Elva Fonseca, and I am a professional organizer. I have been organizing hands-on professionally for 4 years now, and I'll tell you how I started, as if you're interested a little later. But
of course, this podcast is all about you.
Yeah. So it's interesting. That's the question people always ask, how I got started doing this. And it all goes back to a story that I like to share about when I was young. I think that throughout our lives, as we find our career, we find that it all ties back to the beginning, right? We all have a story that makes us unique in how we are. So about 4 years ago, I went through some sort of a depression, or trying to figure out what I wanted to do in my life. I had been working as a office administrator for about 6 years with this company. And I kind of hit a brick wall. And I said, God, I don't know what to do with my life. Yeah. I don't see myself sitting in front of the screen anymore. And though I love to support people, because that's what I'd done my whole life, supporting people, just doing it in front of the screen and being in an office alone by myself wasn't working. And so I prayed about it. I wrestled with the Lord, and I said, God, what do you want me to do with my life? And I at the same time felt so bad for asking for more. I didn't want the Lord to think, and I'm sure he didn't see it this way, that I was ungrateful for what I had, or the job that I had. And so it was a wrestle with how I was feeling. And it took about 2 years of prayer and wrestling. And then finally, one day I went to morning prayer, and I am Christian. Mm-hmm. It's a very strong part of who I am and how I run my business. And I went to 5 o'clock morning prayer, and on my way back, I felt this inclination to look this up as a profession. And as soon as I looked it up, my heart started beating. I got so excited, so happy. I felt like the happiest kid ever. I felt so amazing. I just felt so happy and relieved that I found something. And I immediately gave my 2 weeks notice. No plan. Wow. No savings. And I think thankfully we had gone out of debt. So I think the Lord was paving the way in that way. And so, yeah, I just jumped. And it took a little bit. But, you know, I'm always reminded again of the story of this childhood. When I was about 8 years old, I remember that my mom came from work one day, because at that point my father had been kind of in and out of our lives. And as the oldest, I looked out for everyone, you know, looked out for the little birdies. and that day my mom came home from work a little distraught, and we were playing outside, and I noticed she runs inside. And I run in behind her. As I run in, there's clutter in the living room, dishes in the bedrooms, laundry everywhere. It's just kind of hard to manage when you're a single parent, right? But for some reason, the heaviness of that day, the house felt even heavier, more chaotic. And so I remember finding myself in front of the door and knocking and saying, "Mom, open the door, what's wrong?" And she said, "Nothing, mija, nothing." I said, "Mom, I noticed something is wrong because your voice is breaking." And she said, "Nothing, mija, nothing, just go and play, I'm fine." After a while, she opened the door. I threw myself in her arms, and she said, "I'm alone. I feel so alone." And she had just received news that my dad had been arrested. And so when I go into people's homes, like there's so much story, not just in their lives, but to the clutter. You know, there's so much involved.
There's a reason. People have left stuff somewhere, maybe.
Yeah, or accumulated too much stuff.
I
right?
have never thought of this as that. That's wow.
Yeah. There's this emptiness inside that we're trying to fill sometimes. But in the moment, you know, I told my mom, "Mom, you're not alone. You have me." And that's when I remember that I started purging and going through life, because my life felt so chaotic and so out of control in my little world, right? Because I was so little. And I just remember, like, I don't know what I'm going to do to help my mom, because she tapped me on the head like if she was saying, "What do you know? You're just a kid." But I remember that, you know, I just started making our world better as best as I could, removing things that didn't make sense, putting things in their place, just subtracting what didn't belong to kind of feel whole and feel some order.
So this event that happened to you, that was when you were
when I was a child, yes.
And then when
I started my professional organizing business, I said, "Well, what do I have to offer? How can I help? How does this connect to who I am?" So I thought about this story, came to mind, and I thought, you know, since then I was my mom's right hand. Wow. Whatever she needed, I knew exactly where it is. I helped her with her finances, and any work position that I ever had, it was always like supporting the person, like, what do we need to do? And okay, this needs to be here to make sure that, you know, you get there and you know where it is. So that's just where my journey kind of began, and that's the story that I bring with me everywhere that I go. Like, we're subtracting from our lives what doesn't make sense to create the order that we need in our lives and uncover the beauty and the peace that we need in our lives.
Wow. So it's almost like what you're doing right now is divinely inspired, I think. Like God was making your life this way and setting you up for success to help others in their lives. That's awesome.
That's the way that it has become my journey, my mission to help others, to not feel so burdened by the stuff and kind of find peace where they are in life. Yeah, and help propel them forward as well, because we can feel so stuck with clutter and with where we are in our lives. We can feel so stuck, and clutter makes us feel even more stuck.
Yep. I was curious how you decide something doesn't fit. Like as you're going through all your items, what are the questions that you tell people to ask themselves to either get rid of something or keep it?
Yeah, it's a little different than Marie Kondo's method of does this spark joy. There's a little bit of that, but it's mainly, I start by removing mainly the little objects out of the room and begin with the furniture, right? So we subtract temporarily and then just bring in what makes sense, and everything else is just noise. So we start by putting, okay, how does this serve a purpose in my life? That kind of a question. Because a stapler might not spark joy, but we need it, right? So just keeping what you need, what you love, and what propels you forward. Yeah. And there are some times when we keep things that maybe spark joy, but they don't serve a purpose, and we kind of keep them in a closet because they're pretty. We don't want to get rid of them because they're pretty, but we don't give them a purpose.
Right.
So it's important that if it does spark joy, that it does make you happy, to find a purpose for it. Give it a home, because otherwise it's just accumulation.
Dust collector.
Yeah.
Well, this is one of the reasons why I don't like things that I can't use for something. So like, my mom, for example, has all these like little statues all over the place, like little ceramic figurines. And at one point, when I moved out, she tried to give me some of those, and as a gift. And I had to as nice as I could, just tell her, no, I don't want that. But that's because for me, I just don't see any value in owning those types of things, because I can't use them. I mean, you can only look at them, but at least for me, there's no purpose to own them. Yeah. So that's kind of what's translated in our marriage here, because sometimes Claire does see little things that she wants to get for the house, and I said, well, I mean, is it like a salt and pepper shaker, or is it something we can use? No, I mean, and we've gotten gifts like that too, and we don't know what to do with them, because we don't want to throw them away in case that person comes to visit, and then they ask about it, and but at the same time, we don't use it, we don't know what to do with it, it's just there. So it's just finding somebody to give it a nice home, I suppose. Have you ever re-gifted something?
Yeah, and I think that that's a very common emotion that we go through. It's very common, and when we give something, the act has already been made. You've already given your love to this person through this object. And that person, as much as we doubt it, or as much as we like to believe that they're going to ask you about it, most of the time they don't. They've disconnected themselves from the object, and we feel like we're obligated. And that is one question that I like to sometimes your body does this thing where like you tense up when you touch an object, or when you're like looking at an object and you're like, I don't really want to get rid of it. Your body does this thing. And so asking yourself, am I keeping this out of guilt or because I really need it, is an important awareness question. Because we don't want to go through life with guilt. So if you're holding on to something out of guilt, finding a good way to pass it on to someone is a way to separate yourself from the object. But in the end, it's only an object that's going to move you forward or keep you stuck. And if that person that loved you and gave it to you knew how hard or that it's causing you this, I'm sure that that's not what they intended to do by gifting it to you.
Do you find that most people are more emotionally attached to clothes, cookware, like figurines of sorts, or something else?
It's different for everyone. It's different. I think that it goes back to, again, how they were raised, because there are people that can't part with cookware, even though it's scratched and it's not healthy for them. But it's probably because they didn't have when they were young. So in that sense, we go back and we do affirmations such as, you're provided for. You have been provided for. You have everything that you need. And if you want to, can you afford to get new cookware? Yes. So you're not broke. You don't have to keep something that is scratched.
It's so freeing to hear that. And it's like you think you everything, like you said, just weighs you down. Like, oh, I have this crummy cookware, but if you have the means, get a new pan, because like you said, it may not be healthy.
It's not healthy
to eat on. So that's just liberating to hear someone say that. I think.
And the interesting that you said that it's freeing, because when I first started, it was hard for me to tell people this. But I have found the more that I do it, the more people need permission to let go of things, because they were brought up with the thought of you're being wasteful if you're getting rid of things, and you're not. You're choosing good things for your life. You're choosing health, for example, in this case. So a lot of people need that permission to let go of things.
Sounds like you need a psychology degree to do like decluttering and organization. Like, how much of like therapy are you giving people as well as organization to people's life? It seems.
It seems like we do a little bit of talking through items, but a lot of it comes just naturally. Your body knows what it needs to do. It just needs permission. Yeah. It's just like you go to the bathroom. Your body knows what it needs to do. You just need permission from someone from the outside, someone just telling you how amazing you are for choosing what's good for you. And you have total permission to do it.
Wow. Do people cry usually when you try and help them? And
Yeah. Sometimes it's in the beginning when we're going through the home assessment and we're talking about what's going to happen, and they cry tears of relief because their life is going to come together.
Wow. So you basically, how long does it usually take from the beginning to the end, like when everything's all cleaned up and everything? How long is that usually?
So it depends on the size of the home. Sometimes it takes 12 6-hour sessions. Sometimes if they're smaller, maybe it's just 2 6-hour sessions. It just kind of depends on everyone's situation. There's different levels of accumulation of stuff, and there's just sometimes people are busy and
and you're there through this whole journey with them. You're right there with them.
Yes.
Wow. So what does that do for you emotionally after everything's done and you have to move on to somebody else? What does that do for you emotionally?
Oh, I get attached. I love the people that I get to work with, the families and their transformations. I had a job that I just completed where the client really wanted to start her own soap business, and she had moved into this home, and she kept moving boxes from one place to the other before calling us, just trying to figure things out, and she felt overwhelmed. And after we finished, she cried. Even after we finished, she says, I can't believe how everything came together. And she's like, I would have never been able to do this if you wouldn't have helped. And I had my assistant with me to do her job. So.
Wow. How many people do you count on as part of your business that help you out in getting these operations done?
Yeah, currently I have one assistant.
Wow. And I mean, what has been like the worst case scenario that you've seen in your entire 4 years that you've been doing this?
Well, there's one case where I wasn't able to help.
Oh.
And that's when it was the hardest for me, because like I said, even since I was a kid, like I've always wanted to help everyone, and you just can't, right? But it was this one case where I walked into a home and there was aisles of boxes and just aisles. And that's extreme. People that have extreme hoarding tendencies. And in that case, you do need psychological help. And you just need a specialist in those cases. And, if I would have tried to help, I would have done more harm than good. So I needed to, set aside and have somebody else help her.
Wow.
Yeah. In this case, I think she even had her water turned off. And in these situations, people are so ashamed of the clutter and the situation that they go through, that oftentimes it goes out of hand to the point where electricity gets turned off, they can't pay their bills because they can't find them, or their finances spiral out of control. And so it becomes a snowball effect. So
if someone's in that extreme case, where do they start? Like, what room or what space do you just dive into and begin?
If it's in that extreme of a situation, I would ask for help, because clutter, when, even if it's not that extreme, there's emotions, there's other things going on there that they're going to need a lot of support, emotionally and physically, because it's exhausting in those cases. So in those cases, I would reach out to the National Association of Professional Organizers and look for a professional that specializes in people with hoarding tendencies.
Oh,
there is help out there.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was an organization like that.
I know.
Yes.
Cool.
Wow. Yeah, I used to. I remember that I growing up, I used to just kind of almost save everything. Like in an elementary school, I don't know if they do it now, but back when I was in elementary school, they would give you awards for everything. So I'd have all these certificates, and I would just keep them. And then I realized, you know what? There came a point in my life when I realized, the only diplomas I need are my college ones. Everything else I can, I don't need. I kind of had to just tell my mind it's okay to throw that stuff away. So when we moved from Santa Barbara over to Oxnard, we did like several purges. We had like at least 2 yard sales, just of a bunch of stuff, and the other stuff that we knew wasn't sellable, like these certificates, or I had like
old textbooks.
Yeah, exactly. Or I think, well, maybe, I don't know if we saved this or not. I think we threw it away. It was like a little book of sketches that I had done as a kid. So it's like, and other stuff like paper clips and like old iPhone cases for phones that don't even exist anymore. So I would never use them again. So all that stuff, I just told Claire, okay, let it go. Let's just go. Let's just throw it in there.
But we did spend a lot of time going through things, like, because all of Oscar's memories have been in those boxes, and since we were now joining together, it was fun to go through that cleaning process and like see all of Oscar's sketches and spend time going through all those memory boxes and stuff. So the cleaning process did maybe take a little bit longer than normal, but it was fun.
I'm sure there was a lot of rekindling and you discovering how amazing he is, and and applauding some of his wins,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
That, that's the awesome thing about the things that we bring along in our lives. But then there comes a different season in your life, where you celebrate that other season, the prior season, and you celebrate it, and you part with it, because now you begin an amazing new season with your wife, right? A whole new memories. Yeah. And when you have children, you'll start a whole new chapter. And you'll have to get rid of other stuff, right? To make space for this awesome new adventure that you're going to start.
Yeah.
Yeah, one day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you help people clean up or declutter, what normally happens to that stuff? I mean, is it? I'm assuming it's a combination of things, but what's the process after you have your pile of stuff that you don't need anymore? So where does that pile go?
Well, whatever's trash goes in the trash. And the donatable stuff. One of the questions that I ask is if there is a charity that is near and dear to their heart. And wherever they'd like me to drop it off, we drop it off. Sometimes people would like to do an estate sale, so I help do estate sales for people.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes they want to do a yard sale on their own because they like that experience, so we just set it aside and help them schedule the donation truck at the end so that they're not left with the stuff still. Right? Yeah, so it just depends on the person. Again, part of my business is that I help people part with things in a feel-good way. And growing up, this is another part of me growing up, is that I remember when I wanted to purge with things and my mom would say, but that's my stuff. Son mis cositas. Like,
that's what my mom says
right,
too.
Right,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
It's like Mexican mothers,
Right. Right. Or she would say, I worked hard for that. Why are you getting rid of my stuff? Right?
Yeah.
It's a very common expression between older parents. And so, but however, came time for her to go to Mexico, there was nothing in the world that she needed because she was going to take it to family in Mexico, right? So everything that, when it comes to releasing or parting with things, matters of the heart always wins. So finding a charity that is near and dear to that person's heart will help them because they realize, really, I have everything that I need, right? And they look at something and go, they keep only the things that they really need, and they're able. It's easier for them to part with the things that are just okay, but they don't really love, because they say, well, I don't really love this, but I know Johnny over in Mexico is gonna love it, right? And so it makes it easier.
Wow, I'd never thought of that.
Yeah.
But I do remember that as a kid, when my parents would take us. We'd all go to Mexico, and we would stay out there for some 2 or 3 months. It's just when school was out, we had like 3 months of summer. And so we would spend them in Mexico, and every single time that we went, my mom would take this bag. It was like one of these big trash bags, the black kind. I can't remember the name of the brand,
Just
but
trash bags.
Yeah. And she would just stuff him with clothes that we could take. So we would always take it back to family members in Mexico. So it's funny you mentioned that, because I think a lot of people, especially like a lot of Mexican families, they do tend to do that.
Yeah.
They tend to not want to get rid of stuff if it's just going to be thrown out, but they'd rather regift them to other people.
Yeah, we give the sweater off our own back for someone else, right? We can be so generous, but at the same time, if it's someone just wants to get rid of our stuff, we cling on to it.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. And I still had shirts when we made the move, Claire and I still had shirts from when I was a teenager, and I guess I always kept them because every single time I tried to throw them out, I kept telling myself, just a little bit more exercise, I'll probably fit in these, And of course, that never happened, and it probably was never going to happen, even with exercise, because it was, I grew up, so those clothes just wouldn't have fit either way. So, did you find that people do that when they have when it comes to clothes for women and men, that they have clothes from a different decade when they were younger, and
Yes.
they still keep him hoping that something happens.
We still have your Green Bay Packers jersey in the closet.
Well, I mean, that still fits, and I'm still a Packers fan.
Yes, it does happen. You're not abnormal. It happens, and that's part of it is hopes for the future, and kind of still thinking about the past. Of we think we're kind of stuck in who we thought we were and who we want to be.
Yeah.
So sometimes we need to just think, if we were to fit into it, would we actually wear it? Like, is it faded? Is it something that you think will come in style? I mean, because if you lose the weight, you'll probably want to shop for something that will fit better.
Yeah.
Right? Because even after you've lost the weight, it's still your body shape kind of, everything kind of changes.
Oh, yeah.
So you're going to want to shop for something that kind of fits better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I tell Claire, even if no matter how much weight I lose, my shoulders are still going to be broad, no matter what. So then...
That's okay.
So then it's just finding shirts that fit over my... I think maybe that's why I like the jerseys. Make me look like a football player.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But when it comes to men, for example, what do you find that is like the number one thing that they collect more of? Is it shoes? Is it shirts, pants, belts?
For men, it's interesting, but they like to keep their rugged pants, right? They're like torn pants. They're kind of dingy, and they're ready to go, but they like them because they go, that's for when I work on the car.
Oh.
Or when I do dirty work. So that's the one thing that they like to keep.
And what about women? What do you find in your experience that women have most of?
They have most of. It's different. It's different. I mean, there's women that have a lot of shoes, and there's women that have a lot of purses but don't use them. They kind of just have them as trophies.
Wow. Claire,
so
what do
it's
you
just
have?
different.
Probably a lot of shoes.
Yeah.
Because, I need to pare down the pairs of shoes.
It's different. It's different for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're all different.
Mm-hmm.
No
What
matter if we're all just women and men, our stories are different.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Oscar? What do you have a lot of?
Oh man, I used to, for whatever reason, I would upgrade to a new wallet, and I would just keep the old wallet for no reason whatsoever, other than just, I don't know. I just felt like maybe I could switch them out every now and then, but
you don't.
No, because they were just old. I mean, there was a reason why I upgraded to a new wallet anyway.
Right.
But that was that for a while, and then it was just T-shirts. So Claire knows that I don't like T-shirts with an emblem on it. I just like the pure, like the
basic white tee.
Basic white T-shirts. Just because my skin is a little sensitive. So when it has an emblem on it, it just kind of rubs, and it doesn't feel good at all. So I don't like those. But then through the years, I've been gifted shirts like that, and so I still had those, and I had a lot of those, and they were from different events too. Like we used to do 5Ks, 10K runs and walks. I walk most of the time, but we would get all these T-shirts just gifted to us from events and other places, and that started a collection. And so now I think I have maybe like 2 or 3 just right now, because I like the emotional aspect of it, and how I like the story behind it. But there's gonna be a point where I'm gonna get rid of them anyway. But when we moved, I think most of them went to a yard sale, and the rest went to the donating bin. But now I love the fact that I can walk in my closet and I know that I don't have to keep looking everywhere to find what I need, because I mean, I'm like at work 5 out of the 7 days a week, and there's an attire that I wear for work versus when I'm just relaxing and whatnot. So I don't really need that much anymore.
Right.
Yeah, but so it was for me. It was like I guess the shirts, the T-shirts, and then the wallets. And I really didn't have anything else. Well, cables, I guess. Cables, because I'm crazy about my little gadgets and whatnot.
Technology bin over here.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
So I still have a lot of the cables I got to get rid of. But yeah, cables was the other thing.
Yeah, that's very common among men. Yeah, and I think that's part of their need to be able to provide and protect and discover things and
Yeah, I know. Like I still have cables that you would use when you'd plug into like cassette players and whatnot. And every time I look at them, I'm like, if there's ever a blackout or wherever, blah blah blah, we're in a natural disaster situation, emergency, then I can go into my little bag of tricks and pull out a cable that I need, blah blah blah. It's like VHS hookups. It's just,
Right. I think that's very normal. It just, you have to come to a point where you realize exactly what you need. It's all about awareness, exactly what you need. And it's not just for just in case. Now it's like, okay, where are we now? And, what is technology like now? We don't need these past dinosaur cables, really.
How many siblings do you have?
I have 3.
So have any of your 3 siblings approached you to get you to help them declutter and organize?
Oh, no. I have one of my brothers is just as organized as I am.
Wow. Wow. Mm-hmm. See, Claire sometimes doesn't believe me when I say, men are capable of being organized.
Yes.
But that's great. And then what about the other 2?
The other 2 are a little freer. They
nice way of
they
saying
need
it.
their space. Yeah.
That's great.
They're the younger, and I think that they're in a different place in their journey. And when people are helping a family to go through this decluttering process, it's also very important to give your family space, because your desires for them is not really where they're not in a space where they're ready to accept,
to receive the
help. And so sometimes when they're ready, they'll reach out. But like I said in the beginning, there's a lot of guilt and shame surrounding the clutter. And one of the affirmations that I like to give people is, I forgive myself for allowing things to get this way. Because we all go through life's journeys, and they bring us through things, and they shake us up, and so it's important to give people space sometimes, and just let them know that you're available when they're ready to help.
Because people will reach out to you when they're ready. And so then that's great that you're not met with a lot of negativity, like, don't help me, and comments like that. So most of the time people are ready to get organized. That's awesome. Yeah.
I have a younger, my younger sibling. She goes through periods of wanting to really, or I say release, and my husband says, don't say release. It sounds like the other thing. But she goes through periods of wanting to separate herself from things. And she still lives with my mom. And my mom still has that tendency of, no, these are my things. And so she butts heads. So on the opposite end, another thing that I like to talk to with parents is, don't hinder your kids when they're ready to really part with things, because that's what they need. They need to go through this process of renewing and parting with things, so that they can discover more of who they are.
And what do you tell parents that want to save, like their kid's child adults artwork kind of thing when their kids are already, you know, grown up, they're adults, they're probably in college or moved out, but they still have their childhood artwork. And like, what do you tell parents that want to save that kind of stuff for their kids that are no longer kids?
Well, if they're no longer kids, and the kids don't want it, well, sometimes the parents want to keep, maybe I say, well, maybe you should just keep a few mementos, but really you don't need the whole box or box upon box upon box of things that your child created. You know, there's probably just one or two special memories that you have. And that's the thing, is that with our stuff, we get so busy in life that we forget what we own. We really do. Because if we spend the time going through stuff like you did when you downsized, and you probably found all kinds of things that you're like, I can't believe this. Like, I remember this, but I remember it now. I didn't if I hadn't gone through the box.
Yep.
And that's exactly what happens. Yeah. So it's important to go through our stuff as often as possible, because we need to shed and we need to move forward onto other things so that this old stuff doesn't hold us down.
Now, where has your just business taken you? What kind of adventures? Because I'm imagining that because you get so connected to these families that you help, that I don't know, maybe you end up at a nice birthday party or some event that is amazing, and that you might not normally have gone to. Like, what are some of the benefits that you get out of your business, added benefits, that is, because I know your passion is helping people, but yeah, what other things, what added fun things do you get out of your business?
For me, it's been just growing as a person. You know, I grew up very shy. I knew people by the type of shoe they wore.
Wow.
I wouldn't look at them in their eyes. So just the opportunity to grow as a business owner has just been amazing for me. I recently started a Toastmaster, so public speaking. And now, good. I get to meet you guys and sit here on a podcast. I never thought I'd be doing this, So that has been amazing for me to grow as an individual and to believe in myself as well. Because like I said, at first, when I first started, I knew I can help people, but I was afraid to speak out and give them permission and tell them how I believed in their dreams and how it's possible, and help them uncover it underneath the clutter.
What's your worst shy moment in life? Like, I have mine that just comes to mind every single time we talk about, because I grew up as a very shy kid too. Yeah. And it wasn't until I got into doing news where I was forced, because my job depended on it, I was forced to go out and talk to people, interview people. It's something I hadn't done before that I learned, and then that helped me get out of that shell. But I do have that one moment that always comes to mind, like the really shy experience that just paralyzed me. But what about you? Like,
I'd love to hear yours. I don't think I have one.
Well, I've told this in other episodes because it's the only one that really comes to mind. I mean, there's plenty of other ones, of course, but the one that comes to mind is when one summer my family and I were driving out to Mexico, and the car broke down in the desert near Phoenix. And so we ended up getting towed into the city. And while my mom and the siblings were back at the hotel room, my dad and we took the car to the shop to get it fixed. And then we went to a diner to get some food. But there was a girl there that I thought was really attractive. And so I just couldn't eat. I completely froze. The food arrived. I couldn't eat. And I was just kind of like, like looking around like this, looking away. And my dad said, "What's wrong?" And eat your food. And I said, "No, I can't. And then we ended up just leaving after that. I think he probably figured out what it was, but this was during the years of like about to hit puberty, or maybe I was already puberty. I don't remember, but yeah. So that's how far my shyness went, where I couldn't even eat. When like that person that I was looking at probably didn't even knew I existed, but it's crazy. So that's my go-to experience that I just remember.
Well, that's probably why you get angry when you get hungry then.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just remembering that frustration.
I know. I take it out on cheeseburgers as often as I can. But what's your favorite food?
My enchiladas.
Oh, yes.
Sour cream and avocado and
The red ones or the green ones?
red ones.
Oh, okay. Yeah, in Santa Barbara, there's the Rose Cafe that I always, whenever I go to that restaurant, I always just get the enchiladas, because I always tell myself I'm gonna get something different. Because Claire likes to try different things on the menu every time we go somewhere, but I just stick to the same thing. Do you find that you stick to the same thing too?
Yes, you can eat enchiladas at home, but but you go out somewhere and that's all you see.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, what other I mean, I'm sure along the way you picked up some pet peeves. Like, are there some pet peeves that you have that you developed through the years?
I thought about it on my way here. I know you asked this question. The only thing that I could think of pet peeve is just sometimes it's technology.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I know that it's my pet peeve, but somebody else's gift. So I try to remind myself of that. And hold times when you're waiting to speak on customer service wherever you call. Those two are the things that that kind of.
What about you, Claire?
Well, kind of on the line of like decluttering pet peeve. It might have to do with my esposo over here.
All right. Here
But-
comes the dirty laundry.
Just like when something is empty and you've gotten the new bottle of whatever that was empty, throw away the bottle that's empty. We don't need to leave it there on the counter because it's empty.
Yes.
Oh, we're going there, huh?
Yes.
All right. Well, then I got one. So finish up. I got one.
So that's just kind of what just like kind of like irks me a little bit. It's like, Oscar, just throw it away. You have a new thing. It's a full bottle. Just throw away the empty one. So I find myself going around and throwing away all these empty things that are just there because you've gotten the new thing.
Yeah.
So what's your comment about that, Oscar?
Do you know why?
No, I mean, I guess, yeah, I don't know why.
It's a habit.
Yeah, I guess so.
Probably a habit.
So how do we change it?
Just part of it is being aware of
Yeah.
your habit.
Yeah, I think you're right, because I usually am not aware until she mentioned something.
Right.
And then I go like, oh, all right, I'll go throw it away. But since we're going there, so there's something that Claire does and says that I'm always like, nah, I'm just gonna open it still. That's when we get, okay, for example, coffee creamers. We get 2 or 3 different types of coffee creamers, or even coffee too, like different flavors. Yeah, and she says, well, no, finish up the one that's open up first. And I said, but this is a totally different flavor. I'm craving mint and you're craving caramel. I mean, I can't just, And so, and so yeah, that's my little pet peeve when I'm asked to not open something because something else is open, but it's totally different flavor. Like, what's that about?
Because it all goes along with clutter and space. We don't have unlimited space for everything. So I'm just trying to keep us organized with things that are open and not open, so we can keep things stored if it's not open or whatever. And refrigerator space, it's not a huge fridge. One day when we have a huge fridge, open as many things as you like. But right now, we're in a smaller place.
Well, I mean, some of this stuff goes in the refrigerator no matter what. Like the creamer, you can't just leave out, for example.
Yes.
So it has to be in the fridge.
Yes.
So it might as well be opened.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because you both come from separate households, and then when you're married, you come together, and now there's a lot of compromising.
Yeah.
And with clutter, people tend to throw the blame on each other. Well, if you did this, if you didn't have that, well, why is my stuff cluttered and yours isn't? It becomes a battle. But coming to an agreement and compromising somewhere, I think is always beneficial. Finding a common ground and finding somewhere you can compromise.
Yeah, getting some couples counseling here. That's awesome.
So then your skills of organizing, so we know they developed at a young age, but what did you learn by being in the business that you're in now? What did you learn about decluttering that you just weren't aware of before when you were a kid, for example, cleaning up the house?
What did I learn? One important thing that I learned is that organizing isn't just putting stuff away. Mm-hmm. Because oftentimes, if you notice, there are, just because it's put away, if you don't use it, it doesn't mean that it's not clutter. So a lot of times people just shove things in drawers thinking they're organizing, they're cleaning, but they haven't taken the time to review everything and subtracted the excess or the broken stuff or old cables or ripped shirts or unused, unloved items. Mm-hmm. And so there comes a point where I talk a lot about boundaries. There comes a lot of times when your boundary, your container gets overfilled, and people think that, well, now they need more storage because this isn't keeping my stuff organized. So now I need another storage. So they tend to go out shopping and they buy more storage or more containers thinking that's going to solve the problem, and it doesn't. It's important to assess the things that you own and first remove the things that you don't need or you don't love or need to keep. Mm-hmm. And then assess your boundary or your containment situation.
Mm-hmm. That's a great way to look at it.
Wow.
Awesome.
Like, you have kids.
Yes, I do.
So do you find that they just collect things that are not needed, and you always have to keep organizing their stuff? Like, do they even know? Are they attached to these things that sometimes they might collect and kind of forget about it?
And how do you instill organization in your kids?
Yes.
How do you teach that?
Well, in my son, for example, he's my son likes to play Legos, and he likes to build Legos. And so after he creates them, I give him a place to display them. So that instills to them pride in their work, right? Mm-hmm. And it helps them to see limits as well, because there's only a certain amount of wall space. And so you want to help your child learn limits as well. And just going through the process with them often, going through and telling your kid, go clean your room. Mm-hmm. Their version of clean your room is not your version of clean your room. Mm-hmm. So it's important to take the time, though we're busy and we'd like for them to just take care of their portion because we've got so many other things to do. Mm-hmm. It's important to spend a little bit of time reviewing with them or going through it with them. And just like adults, we need a sounding board to figure out what to keep and what to let go of. Let me back up and say, when you guys downsized, mm-hmm. I'm sure that, Oscar, you found it really helpful to have her there.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, exactly.
As a sounding board of like, I don't know, what do you think? Like, and with kids it's the same, they need to hear your voice of affirmations for how amazing they are. And again, also give them permission to release the things that they don't want, and say it's okay, you don't play with this toy. Well, let's figure out if your cousin wants it, or find a way that is helpful for you as well, that feels good for things to pass on to someone else, whether it be donation, whether it be your local church, whether it's selling it maybe online, whatever it is that you need to do. But if he feels the need that he doesn't play with the toy anymore, giving him the permission is also very important to do this kind of thing with them periodically.
And have you experienced cases where you've repurposed things to make them usable instead of kind of just throwing them away?
Oh, yeah, that's always helpful as well. Yeah, my son especially, I think that's very common with boys. They like to tinker with things. They like to create things. That's probably the reason you collect the cables too. Maybe in your childhood in Mexico, we repurpose things all the time, or they repurpose things all the time. And so, yeah, having like a creator's box or something for them for when things are broken, and then they can create things. Kids have way more fun with boxes than with toys.
Very true.
Yeah. Well, this is how this podcast came to be together too, because you're right, because of all the cables and stuff. I was doing some decluttering, and I figured I've always been obsessed over just the podcast world. Claire and I used to do a little news podcast back in the day, but that was just too much work. But in any case, like all of a sudden, I during the decluttering process, I found these XLR cables that you connect the microphones to, and some other gadgets that I had that worked as podcast equipment. So when I used to be a news photographer, I would have all these gadgets that I would carry with me, because I would need an extra cable, XLR cable, or I would need a battery charger, or just little things that I might do as part of my daily job. And so when I stopped being a news photographer, then all that stuff stayed there, and I didn't get rid of it. So during decluttering, I found some of that stuff would be useful for repurposing into a podcast and creating a little podcast studio. And so that's why I just thought of that question, because you're totally right. I think with guys, they do repurpose a lot of stuff. Give them new meaning, if you will.
Yeah, and it's important also to know that the whole point of organization is not just to get rid of stuff, it's to keep the things that add value to you. But when the things that you think you need to keep for some time become an obstruction in your life, they're no longer being helpful, right? So it's not necessarily necessary to always get rid of stuff. But it's important to know if you're limited on space and it's causing problem, then we need to address the problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, like this table, for example, that we're sitting on. Basically, it's very portable, very light, that can be used for anything else. I mean, probably poker, or for just anything that we want. If we need to carry it out or hide it. I mean, this thing fits in the closet, but I didn't want to get a table like out of wood, for example, that we'd have to carry up the stairs and worry about when we moved and all that stuff. I found for myself that throughout the years that I like portable things. If I can just use them, but have them be portable enough that I can grab and go and not have to worry about having them clutter up the place if they don't need to be there, then I thought that for me that works. So for people that want to have certain things like a table or a chair or something that they can use, would you say that would you recommend having these things be somewhat portable, or do you think if people start getting, things that are like made out of wood and start getting all these types of furnitures that's not that easy to move, you think that may lead to just continuing to clutter up the place?
I think that it goes back to the question of what do you want to do in your life? Because if this is where you are right now, and you don't, this is advancing your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, you're in a small living space. So you need this. This is how you need it to function for you. Mm-hmm. So it's important. That's another awareness question. Like, it's not. It goes beyond the, whether it's portable or whether you should get something more permanent.
Yeah. Well, have
Right.
you seen these documentaries about downsizing, people that are almost living on
Minimalist.
Minimalist, yeah.
Minimalist.
There's this documentary called Minimalist, and yeah, it's about.
Yeah, and what they want, what they like about being minimalist is the experiences, right? They can get up and go travel somewhere without worrying about stuff, right? So it's what everybody wants to do in their lives, and that's the whole point of why we're here is to go through experiences and live life as richly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So when you
touch and impact other people's lives in the process.
Yeah. And then when you organize things, like in your case, do you like to organize, for example, holiday decorations in boxes, all thrown in together? Do you separate the holidays in boxes, different boxes, or you just not collect these decorations at all? I mean, what do you do?
Me personally,
Yes.
or when I organize for my clients?
You personally, because I know a lot of families also have things that they need to set aside that are not useful year round, just for certain periods in the year. So what do you do with that stuff?
Yeah. So me personally, I have probably 5 bins. And that's it. I have one closet space where I keep them. And, as long as you're using your space and it's not limiting anything else, right? It's in a place that I don't need access to all the time. It's high up and it keeps everything contained. And when when it's time for Christmas decorating, it's stress-free and I can pull out everything.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my parents just have this big old bin and they just throw everything in there.
Yeah.
It's like, no, now we have to detangle everything.
Yes. So, yeah, I have the Christmas tree separated from the ornaments, separated from the what is it called? The lights. Everything
Yeah.
is separated. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I think you answered it the first time.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's also like Thanksgiving. Well, I mean, like Claire, sometimes when I noticed this last year a lot more than previous years, but when let's say Thanksgiving rolls around, when Christmas rolls around, oh, you gotta have the Christmas themed plates, and then you have to get Christmas themed napkins too, and do this and that, and for Thanksgiving do the same thing. You got to get these themed plates.
Yeah.
But then you're not really using it for the rest of the year. So usually I tell her, okay, you know what, paper plates are okay, paper plates, because you can just toss them. But they sell more permanent plates out there. I just don't. For us, I don't think that's the way we need to go.
Yeah.
But have you found that people like to get permanent themed things?
I think that it now with this generation, it's less and less. But there are definitely people that like to entertain more. And so it just kind of, again, it depends on people's lifestyle and kind of, whether they like to entertain. the thing with that kind of thing is that us as women, we're built differently. We like to create the warm environment and bring people together. And so I think that's all part of the ambiance. I think that's all part of the ambiance that women like to create. But it's different for everyone. Yeah, like you said, some people, can go with just the paper plates and as long as people are together, so it's different for everyone. Yeah, the main thing, I help people organize their lives so that they can enjoy the process and it's not, creating a problem in their lives. Because clutter can create not just, feeling of being stuck, but also friction among family members and just there's a whole thing that clutter does.
Yeah, totally.
Now you said earlier that you have helped organize estate sales. What are your top items that should not be part of estate sales? Something that people might think, because when we started doing yard sales to get rid of our stuff, there were certain things I was like, oh, maybe this will sell, and Claire says, no, that will not sell. So in your experience, what are some of the things that people need to realize they will not sell, that they shouldn't put out in an estate sale or yard sale?
The way that I do estate sales is I have a partnership with a company called Maxsold, and it's an online type of estate sale. And what we do is we take pictures of everything, and then everything starts at an auction of $1. So you auction it off. This is a great method to keep things out of the landfill. And with the Maxsold format of estate sales, everything can be sold. Wow. The main thing you want to keep in mind is not to put anything that is ripped or stained, like maybe old mattresses, things like that. But you'd be surprised to know that with the Maxsold, we have even sold the cleaning supplies under the sink.
What?
Like Lysol spray?
Lysol, yeah.
Interesting.
Wow. Yeah, or plants that they had in the backyard. Yeah, so it depends on what kind of sale that you're doing. Like if it's a yard sale, yeah, I'd say, you have to be more choosy as to what you put out there. Because yard sales also, you make very little money for the amount of time and effort you put into it. So it just kind of depends on what method you're using. That's the reason I like the Maxsold format, because you don't have to spend a day out in the sun. Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you've learned as a business owner that maybe you can impart on other people that are trying to start their own business, regardless of what it is?
Advice to new business owners.
Yeah, what did you, if somebody's trying to start up their own business, no matter what it is, what are some of the hurdles that they can expect that they'd have to be jumping over just creating a new business? Because creating a new business is not easy. So in your experience, what's the process like to create a new business?
The advice that I would say that I would give to them is believe in yourself. Believe in the way that you have been created and that you have a mission and a purpose. And there will be hurdles and there will be times when you are crying and doubting yourself. But I would say try to look past that feeling that you're feeling. Get out of your head. Move forward. Do the next step and move forward. You're on the right track. I would say you're on the right track, and believe in yourself.
And what's the biggest challenge that you've had to face doing what you do?
The biggest...
Being a business owner.
Yeah, I think that the biggest challenge maybe has been finding the balance between wanting to help and finding the time to be with my family. Taking care of myself. I think that has been the biggest challenge.
Are you still facing that challenge, or did you figure out the balance?
I'm working on it. I'm working on it. There are times when I get caught up in the project, but as soon as I realize it, I bring myself back in.
So what do you do to kind of just relax, get away from work?
Lately, going to the beach.
Oh, that's always a good
It's
thing.
not as close to me as it is here in Santa Barbara. But yeah, lately it's been that, sticking my head in a book.
What book are you reading right now?
Currently, I'm reading, I don't even remember what book I'm reading. There was one, it's one about adulting.
Wow. Okay.
It's one about adulting and your emotions.
Good topics.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you like the nonfiction stuff, or do you find like you're more gravitating towards something that can help you in life?
Yeah.
Okay.
The self-help books.
Yeah. I recently just got into more of the cooking stuff, like
Really?
cookbooks. Yeah. There was a time in my life when I just would not, and this is coming back to food. Yeah, out of all things. When I wouldn't cook. I didn't really know how to, and then one day I just thought, let me just change my whole perspective on food and in life, and let me do something. And so I just started loving the process of creating. So I do a lot of grilling, and then of course, like with one thing I didn't have was patience. So now that I do have, as I'm getting older, I do have more patience for things. And if I look at a cookbook, I'm more inclined to follow the instructions. Whereas before, I was like, I'll just whip it up. I know the ingredients. I'll just put them all together and see what happens.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it would not end up in a good.
Yeah.
But thanks to some cookbook. I mean, one time I remember I went to Barnes and Nobles, and I went to the lifestyle section, where you just find books that can help you out in life. And I ended up buying this little book with just all these sayings and also stories that experiences that had a moral to them, or a
life lesson.
A life lesson, exactly. Because I don't know. I feel like I'm out of that Goosebumps phase in my life, and now it's more adult books.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Kind of circling back to organization. When you walk into a home for the first time, what's the first thing you notice?
So a lot of times, people, I notice the person first. I notice how they're feeling, kind of a little bit embarrassed and kind of looking at me to see what I'm going to say. So I notice how the person's feeling. But mainly what I look for is, as they walk me through the space, I like to see kind of where things are now, because I like to create a flow in the home so that eventually everything will have a place. But in order for things to find a place, you kind of have to figure out like what needs to move first in order for that to happen. And so I start to compute like a whole puzzle in my head of where I need to move the boulder in order for things to kind of find a home. So that's kind of that's what I go through.
Wow.
So yeah, people are like, oh my gosh, she's gonna notice all my mess. And to me it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna create the puzzle. Like, okay, so this shouldn't be here, this should go over here, this okay. So I get excited.
Wow. So this is all in your head.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I'm listening and writing down notes and
Wow.
I think I'd be the type of person that would, if I knew you were coming over to help me declutter, I would want to clean, knowing that like the person coming to help me clean was coming. I'd want to like put things away, but that's just.
Well, I send a notice ahead of time. You don't need to clean ahead of time, pre-clean for the organizer. It's important to know, because again, we want to know what kind of systems you need to have in place. Like if your laundry is in the living room, why is it in the living room? It means you need a system for your laundry, right? So that's the reason I say to the people ahead of time, like, you don't need to organize for me. You don't need to organize ahead of time. Yeah. I need to see how you function so that I can figure out what kind of systems I need to put in place for you.
Do you ever use organizational charts, or do you physically move certain items to just paint a picture to your client of how things would look like if they did this or did that?
Yeah, so I have design software. So sometimes when it has to do with furniture placement, and that's the reason things aren't flowing, then I can show them, okay, so if we move the sofa here, see how this is going to flow better. So in that situation I do. But oftentimes when it comes to like the kitchen and the pantry and things like that, I'm very tactile and intuitive, so I need to be in there and feel the environment and touch the stuff and move things around in order for things to kind of come together as well. So it's a little bit of both.
That's good. Man, it must be so interesting just watching your work. Yeah. Do you like talk out loud as you're going through each of the rooms, or you just kind of just quietly just look and analyze and then finally tell the client, all right, this is what I have?
Sometimes a little bit of both. Yeah, because like I said, I grew up very quiet, right? So I internalize a lot of things. So I don't just internalize like the stuff, the environment. I also internalize, like I feel like the emotions and the things, the sometimes friction between the couple, to figure out, okay, what's causing the friction, Yeah. So yeah, it's a little bit of both.
Wow. Any tips on pets? Because pets can get messy. I mean, it's little Sandy here, a little Cocker Spaniel. He grabs a toy and then just takes it all over the place. And then he goes and grabs another toy and then he puts it somewhere else. So then all of a sudden we have things all over the place, and I know we're not the only ones. People with pets, they tend to be a little messy with their toys and stuff like that. so should we
pets and kids?
Yeah, exactly. Do you have any tips on dealing with pet clutter or organization with pet toys and stuff like that?
Well, with pet toys, it's important for them to have a place as well, right? And then, there's probably a video that'll show you how to train your dog to put his toys away. I mean, I saw a KonMari video where the dog was putting things away, and they mimicked the feeling of, oh, this toy doesn't spark joy because it was left out.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm sure that it's possible to train your dog to put his toys away.
Wow.
Right? But having a place for everything, from like the self-care of your dog to its food, to where to hang the leashes, because your dog is also learning how you take care of him, right? And will follow you. As soon as you grab the leash, he knows it's time to walk.
Yeah, true.
So he will learn your commands and do what you tell him to do. As far as the pets go. Now, kids are a little tricky. They need a little more repetition.
Okay, so bottom line, after folks declutter and organize all their stuff, what's the feeling they should get? What? Because I've seen some people. Of course, this is in really extreme cases where they're hoarding things, and I've seen these shows where they're almost forced to get rid of their stuff, and so at the end they just feel so anxious and just stressed, even though they decluttered everything. But like, bottom line, just what is the feeling that you're going for after everything is said and done?
Yeah, well, with me, that's probably just on TV for ratings. But you know, as professional organizers, we don't force anybody to part with things. The feeling that you get at the end when everything has an order is just, it's mind clarity. You have clarity because you know exactly what you have, where it is, right? And when you need to go out the door, you know exactly where your things are. There's a peace that comes to your life, again, because you're able to, you know, clear hallways, and everything has a place. It's a great feeling.
Wow. All right, we'll do a round table now, just the final thoughts. But if you have any questions.
One more thing. Just curious if you've ever been able to share your faith with a client. Just, I'm sure there's biblical principles. Cleanliness is next to godliness. So just, have you been able to do that, and how do you incorporate your faith into your business?
Yeah, there are times when I feel the opportunity to. So I just ask if it's okay if I serve them by praying for them. And when we take our breaks, with our client, and we talk surrounding the meal, and that's the time when I usually am allowed the opportunity to. And it's always when I notice the opportunity to. Yeah, and people need it so much.
That's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
For anybody that wants to contract your services, where can they find you?
Yeah, they can reach out to me on my website at www.sensationalorganizing.com. That's where they can get additional information.
Perfect. And we'll definitely put a link to the website on the description of this podcast episode.
Yeah.
Claire, do you have any other questions?
Just thinking about back to food. How do you organize food when you, like, things that have expired? It's like, oh, I might use that. Like, how do you keep your kitchen pantry clean and organized?
When ingredients are expired, or?
Yeah, just like, when's a good time to go through all that, and what's your best tips to keep your kitchen in good flow?
Yeah, for kitchen, think about the zones, the way that you function to use your kitchen, and anything that you don't use frequently, try and find a place for it somewhere else. So just the essentials that you need for your kitchen to function on a day-to-day basis. So like entertainment stuff, if you could find another place for it, if there is limited space in your kitchen, I would start there. So zoning your kitchen. And then as far as like pantry items, it's the way that we organize is we separate by category. So your snacks, you know, get rid of the cardboard boxes and empty out all your snacks into a container. And you separate the drinks, you separate the condiments, and just all the different categories. And that way, when you're cooking, you're enjoying the process, and you're not trying to find, you know, that ingredient way in the back of
the garlic salt
of your pantry. Yeah. Yeah. I think the hard part for people when it comes to their kitchen are very deep pantries, because things get lost in the back. And the other thing that is helpful is to have like a method to write down the stuff that you're going to get from the store, your grocery list. So having a centralized place for, like, in case, you know, Oscar notices that you're low on milk, so you write it on the list so that you know, Claire can pick it up when she's at the store, instead of going to the store, coming back and realizing that there's no milk.
It's the worst feeling.
Right. So, and just communicating. I think that's the other thing that oftentimes I find that there's, you know, limited communication within the family unit, and it's important to say where things are and why. And that prevents some of the frustration. as well. Yeah.
Well, before we end this episode, I want to give you one opportunity to give us any final thoughts, something that maybe Claire and I didn't ask or that you want to just put out there. Do you have any final thoughts?
Any final thoughts? You don't need to go on a decluttering spree. Start in one drawer. And, I know that, on TV shows and a lot of people say, pull everything out. But if you're limited on time and you only have about an hour to spend on the project, then be aware of that and don't pull things out, because what happens is when everything is pulled out and you don't have time to put it back, you come back to a big mess, and then your life keeps moving forward and you can't function. So being aware of your time limits and tackling one drawer at a time.
Love that.
Perfect. Well, Elva, thank you so much for coming to visit us and being part of this podcast.
You're welcome. I'm so honored that you invited me. Thank you so much. I had so much fun.
We wish everyone could be clean and organized after this.
Thank you.
My thanks again to Elva Fonseca from Sensational Organizing. We, of course, are going to put the link to her website and social media in the description to this podcast episode, so be sure to look for that. And if you love this episode and you love the podcast, mention it to your friends and family, but most importantly, go and review it. We are everywhere, including Apple Podcasts. The more you review it, the more people that can benefit from these topical discussions can listen to the podcast. All right, and for any questions and comments, email hangrymexicanpodcast@gmail.com. I would love to feature some of those comments in future episodes. Everybody, I hope you're having a great week. And until next time, good night, good luck.